Well, thank you everybody for being with us today. Hopefully it'll be good, fluid. As I always I like to remind, my mother tongue's French, so sometimes the mouse gets off the wheel. It takes me a few seconds just to get my thoughts back in place and be able to reconvene with you. So bear with me.
We're happy to have you, Richard, and it's your words are always well placed, so thank you.
Thanks. I've written a part of my script so I don't miss anything. So thanks for your hints, Tina. It was helpful.
Thank you for all you do, Richard, and thank you to our panelists and our audience members. This is a team sport, so we know you're all busy and we appreciate everybody pitching in, so thank you. So my trick is to wait 5 seconds, and if nobody comes in the doorbell, oh, there you go. Let's wait another 5 seconds here. So Richard, anytime you want to get started, we'll leave it to you. Okay. People are still joining, but I think they'll catch on as we get started.
Cool enough. It's 2:01, so let's go.
Okay, let's go. Well, let me introduce you at least, Richard. For everybody on the audience, I think most of you, we've all met before. I think many of you know each other, but I'm Tina Sardine. I'm the executive director, and I have the privilege to introduce a very special person who is our moderator today, Chief Richard Amnotte. He's been part of the CFC board for a very long time, and this is his first year that he finally decided not to run again, but he is very gracious and coming back to be our moderator. So Richard, bienvenue, merci, and we'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Tina. Thank you for everybody for being here. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tous, wherever you may be in this great country, or maybe anywhere else in the world. I'm glad to be the moderator for this session with CFC Health Canada workshop. This panel is titled Taking Care of Our Own. We'll get perspectives on fire department, wildland agency, firefighter school, perspectives with firefighter cancer. As Tina mentioned, my name is Richard Amnotte. I'm deputy chief with the City of Lévis Fire Department, located just across from Quebec City, our provincial capital in province of Quebec. I'm a strong advocate of firefighter health and safety, and more specifically, a strong advocate on firefighter cancer prevention. While enough said about me, I'm to direct the spotlight on our great panelists who delightfully accepted to be with us to share their views, thoughts, concern, perspectives on the different questions we will address during this next hour together. Our great panel is formed by Troy Adams, director with the New Brunswick Wildfire Management from New Brunswick, Deputy Chief Nina McCarthy from Fredericton Fire Department, again, New Brunswick, Shawn McKerry, Dean with the Emergency Training Center in Lakeland College, Alberta, Chief Larry Thomas from Surrey Fire Service, BC, and Chief Blaine Wiggins, Senior Director of National Indigenous Fire Safety Council. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today, and a warm welcome to our panel. I would like to remind every participant that you may use the instant translation app to the language of your choice, and you may post comments and questions using Menti. As a panelist you will have thoughts and ideas, and we want to capture these. The result on the Menti and speaker points will all go into a report that will help us form the framework. So with that, let's get started, and I'll turn over to our panelists to please introduce yourself, and if you would like, provide your first thoughts on the first questions that is about the new IARC report published lately, findings that the firefighting job, and putting it as a first tier, as carcinogenic profession what does it mean to you? And may I direct maybe go to Larry to get your first thought on the subject.
Thank you, Chief. So I'm Larry Thomas, Fire Chief from the City of Surrey. I've been in the fire service for about 34 years and have filled many roles from union president to provincial rep to fire chief now. And so on that first question, I think the IARC report validates and confirms what we've been working on for me 20 years with the different studies and Dr. T. Guttati's work about establishing that there is a direct link to increased risk of cancer by being a firefighter and being exposed. So I think that really backstops a lot of positive momentum to move forward now to get different systems developed that recognize that through our social healthcare systems and pre-screenings and et cetera, and gives focus for fire chiefs to implement the proper risk reduction programs and wellness programs.
Thanks, Chief Thomas. May I turn to Blaine Wiggins, please?
Thank you, Chief. From our perspective, Blaine Wiggins, I'm with the National Indigenous Fire Safety Council and help support the Indigenous Fire Marshal Service within that. Like everybody here, long and storied career in fire, EMS, wildfire, emergency management, but just loving my current role and working for First Nations communities. But just from a global perspective, one of the things the report really does, and again, I won't repeat, I'll just echo the same sentiments that some of my esteemed colleagues are going to say. But from an Indigenous perspective, what it gives us is a solid framework to start from, to know what we're dealing with. One more thing, we anecdotally did, now we do know the challenge that we have given the environments that we're in, with the gaps in occupational health and safety, and so many other legislative gaps that we operate under. Our number one stop on the wheel of making changes is working with bureaucrats within Indigenous Services Canada. And just so if I could spend the whole hour, but I won't. Having a report that validates, that isn't anecdotal, it's something that is absolutely solid. It starts the process for us, because like I say, it starts with bureaucrats before we ever get to meaningful work out with communities. But then it also does heighten, it literally is a pile of big things that we just kind of add to that behind us. And it's an important thing, because there are meaningful things we can do in the immediate future. So I won't go beyond that. I think that's just kind of a nice roundup from our perspective. Thank you,
Blaine. If we go on the school perspective with Shawn McKerry from Alberta.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And as I mentioned to Tina coming in, I do appreciate being recognized and being brought on this panel. It's fantastic. So again, welcome everyone. My name is Shawn McKerry. I'm the Dean of the Emergency Training Center. Previously to arriving here about a year and a half in this role, I was a fire chief and a chief administrative officer with a municipality in Alberta, and spent about 20 years in the fire service world as well. So with this report, like Chief Thomas had said straight off the bat, I think this validates, the blood, sweat, and tears, and the literal blood, sweat, and tears that many of the people in this room and on the panel have spent advocating and pushing and lobbying in their provincial and territorial and nationally for what we have done so far and what we've accomplished. And I think, again, there's still much more work to do, and this will absolutely aid in continuing to push that. I think in an academic perspective, which I've come to learn and understand a lot more in the last year and a half, which is wildly different, it's also a great document that I think that we can be using and especially with our applied degree program and our practicums that are involved, that we can be using this in papers and projects moving forward. To only, again, strengthen what's going out into the emergency service world. And then also in an academic research perspective, I'm very interested to see how this goes, because and using this, because I think it opens the door to a lot more research opportunities and a lot more monitoring opportunities. Once I'm excited is seeing, some of the operational changes and things that we're doing now and have been for the last 5 years, is it actually going to be making a difference over the next few years, and what is making the biggest impact? So I'm curious to watch and hopefully be strongly involved as our institution at the table in those kind of discussions and going forward.
Yeah, it will require us to reformat the training programs and also reformat the minds of our younger recruits coming into firefighter training, and with what they've seen in the past, and now what they need to have in their heads and minds as to they go and fight fires, considering the carcinogens, sorry, that they'll be facing now on fire scenes. Well, thanks, Shawn. Let's turn over now to New Brunswick and get the perspective from the Fredericton Fire Department. So, Nina.
Thank you. I think I'm just going to kind of dovetail the comments that some of my colleagues have made, and particularly Chief Thomas mentioned the fact that this brings validity. And I think what that can mean for the future is that starting right with new recruits, right through to our longest serving members, is the realization that this is real. That's some of the problems we have, you know, in implementing those directives, those SOPs, is trying to show the data, the research, this document that says this is a real hazard. This is really happening.
On the risks.
Thanks, Richard. Troy Adams, the Director of Wildland Fire Management for the province of New Brunswick. I'm going to speak mostly today from the perspective of wildland fire, but just as an off, I'm also a volunteer firefighter with my local fire department. So I bring a bit of a perspective there as well, although haven't had a long career there as of yet. But there's many concerns when it comes to you know, the structural side of things. Of course, we talk about a lot of different carcinogenic substances that structural firefighters are exposed to, and this report really goes a long way to identifying that. And I guess the position I come at it from is on the wildland side of things. I don't think it's anywhere near as recognized the exposure that wildland firefighters are subjected to on a yearly basis. You know, as we go forward with climate change and whatnot, and as we've seen this year across Canada, we've had a number of national and international firefighters exposed to some serious amounts of carcinogenic substances over many weeks. And you know, wildland firefighters are more and more working in the interface as well. So not only do they get exposed to those combustible materials from wood and that type of thing, but they're also exposed in the interface to numerous other amounts of different carcinogenic chemicals and whatnot. And really on the wildland side of things, it hasn't been studied that deeply, and we really need to focus some effort, and hopefully the spin-offs from this report will focus some effort on doing some research on you know, the general chemicals and whatnot in the wildland that firefighters are exposed to, but also moving forward, you know, what are they exposed to in the interface, and what types of mitigations can we put in place to mitigate those risks from cancer. So looking forward to things moving ahead at a rapid pace on that side of things. I appreciate being here.
Yeah, especially when it comes to respiratory protection for the wildland firefighters, it's quite difficult to have the level of protection that a municipal firefighter would have with SCBAs and so forth. It's kind of very much limited, and I think science hasn't gone to the point of providing wildland firefighters with efficient respiratory protection tools. Is that right, Troy?
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, since I've been involved in wildland fire, people have been trying to figure out ways to protect their respiratory system from you know, not just cancer causing chemicals, but dust and other debris that you're that you're exposed to for extended periods of time in the wildland. And there's never been, I know there's some focus on it now, but there's never been a real good solution to protect people from inhalants, for sure.
It's trying to find the balance in between the effective, efficient way of protecting and not causing or bringing another type of impact on the health and safety for the wildland firefighters.
For sure, absolutely.
Thanks. The other subject on our list is the type of standard operating procedures that exists, and if are missing or we think could be missing, which ones would be needed. And I would just go by show of hands. Who would like to grab on that question at first? Well, Larry.
Thank you. So I think in terms of standard operating procedures, there's really three things that are important for fire departments, fire chiefs, and administrators to consider. One is part of your wellness program should be educational based about understanding the risks from the individual's perspective. So that would take your family history, making sure there's annual medicals, obesity, tobacco and alcohol use, stress, sleep patterns. All those things are within the control of the individual to a certain extent to lower your overall general risk of cancer. Because we know the second pillar would be your exposures and having what I like to call a post-exposure risk reduction program. So I'm sure lots of departments do this already, but you should have policy about gross decon, all the equipment on the trucks, including wipes to get soot off your neck and cuffs and wrists, etc. Have a rehab bag and clothing that firefighters can change into when they get out of their contaminated bunker gear. Make sure you're bagging it. You're following clean cab rules, no dirt, soot, anything in the cab where you live and breathe. Making sure the gear is washed in a safe way to limit exposure, showering as soon as you can. All those things should be embedded in OGS and policy and become part of the culture and practice that helps with firefighters following what they should be doing. And then the third pillar I like to refer to is trying to reduce the exposures, which is a more challenging one because we're firefighters and we respond to fires. And I akin it to your lifetime exposures like a punch card. Every time you get exposed, you're punching your card, and you don't want your card to get full and you don't want it to be over full. And there's a saying that if it's on you, it's in you. I think that's very true. There's lots of research. Ottawa did a great job on proving that. So people need to have preventative programs and operational programs that link up with that. So a simple example is, for years we used to have lots of abandoned house fires when there's urban renewal going on, and we were putting firefighters in and exposing them unnecessarily to the risks of fighting a fire and the exposures. So I know Edmonton's got a community property safety team, Surrey does, where we're actioning those abandoned buildings before they catch fire, getting them demolished or secured to prevent those abandoned fires. So that's one little way administratively we can reduce the exposure risk. And then the other thing that we like to do, and we do this through our battalion chiefs and our operations staff, is challenge them to come up with ways to reduce exposures with nuisance fires, whether it's a vehicle fire, a garbage container fire, a brush fire, something that you don't need to have 3 companies all in the smoke envelope on. You should be able to do some of it from a distance, try to attack from outside the smoke envelope. Again, full PPE, but reducing that exposure so you're not punching your card. Now, that's easier said than done. I acknowledge that, but it's really that mindset on how to problem solve. I think our firefighters are great problem solvers if they know what problem they're trying to solve. And so that would be my comments about, if you don't have those policies, you should. What's missing is really the cultural acceptance of those 3 things that I just mentioned. I think everyone's at varying degrees of understanding that. I'm not sure if the practice is 100% there yet. And that would be my observation. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. As I say oftenly, the worst enemy of a firefighter is the firefighter himself. In regards to the culture change, when it comes to not going not overexposing themselves.
Mhm.
I was noting, we're basically curious individuals. We want to
Yeah.
see. So in many cases, we might have not have been inside that building fire. And at some point during the intervention, like being the pump operator, for example. But at the end of the fire, when it's under control, we want to see. And this is where we get inside the building, maybe exposed to the smoke. And it might be a situation as I'm just going in for a minute or so just to see what went on. And actually, we're inside that building, not maybe wearing that SCBA and the full protective gear, because we see the situation somehow being under control. There's no more flames, the fire's under control, blah, blah, blah. It's quite stable. And it's just that curiousness may just bring us that overdose that may trigger that cancer situation.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Chief. It's the stuff you can't see that's the most dangerous. So the smoke might be gone, but the off-gassing is there for quite a significant amount of time. And that's the real bad stuff, especially if you're not in PPE.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And some scientific research shows that even in the surrounding, outside from that visible smoke space, there's carcinogens within the outskirt of that visible, due to the dust and smoke around the building. And we may be exposed just being at the command post, for example. Any thoughts and perspectives from others, being either in the wildland or maybe in another Troy?
Yeah, I would say, when we're talking about standard operating procedures, we're, in the wildland side of things, probably 20 years behind. I don't want to speak for every agency in the country, but I've been on deployments and whatnot across Canada, and I've seen, the exposure and whatnot that wildland firefighters are exposed to, and really the lack of those standard operating procedures that would try to mitigate the exposures of firefighters. And part of that job is being exposed to smoke almost constantly. If you're going on a 14-day deployment to anywhere in the country, you're staying usually in tents. You're exposed to, you're near the fire. You're exposed to smoke at night, during the day, basically 24/7 while you're on one of those types of fires. And I've seen many times, the clothing that firefighters wear and the Nomex, it helps to keep you from getting burned if you get too close, but its protection to contaminants and soot and dust and whatnot is very, very limited. Firefighters, when they come back from the field for a day's work, are absolutely covered in soot, and not just faces and hands, but all on the legs and whatnot. And there's really no procedures in place that tells them how they should be decontaminating and whatnot. Although facilities do exist, it doesn't always happen. We see firefighters going to eat their suppers and whatnot, and still not really decontaminated from the day's work. So yeah, we're I would say pretty far behind in that.
And facilities in the field are not that much deployed or accessible.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on what agency you go to. Some of the mature agencies and whatnot have some pretty good facilities in the field, but you're still have that exposure and whatnot, right? And you might have 300 people using the same facilities, and it's hard to decontaminate after a day's work, whatnot. So
yeah. On the Indigenous side, fire service, Blaine, what's your perspective?
So one of the things that's actually driving us, just with the recent information we have, is just to start to do research on, again, going back to the occupational health and safety component. We can, again, anecdotally say, 95% of the First Nations fire departments don't subscribe or have occupational health and safety coverage to begin with. Yeah. But even the ones that do have occupational health and safety, Not saying not everyone does, but the ones that do, I would suspect that the majority of those ones, they're purchasing the insurance, but they're not necessarily complying or being forced to comply with the regulations. And so in that, we have just a large gap in not only the knowledge and the awareness, but the capacity to adhere to, just generalized occupational health and safety. So, I mean, that's the, which, good news for Wildland is they're 20 years behind, we're 30 years behind. But the good news, I mean, we always got to look at the upside is, the formation of the councils as a whole now has provided the avenue for us to not wait for years. So like we can take the resources and capacity we have, highlight this as an issue, and then there's some low picking fruit, as I like to call it, some easy, not expensive things to do. Chief Thomas indicated the wipes, just getting the promotion of that out there, but also advocating in the big kind of scheme of things for very few stations have been equipped with equipment wash machines, and pushing that as an issue and explaining to, again, the bureaucracy how important that is to the overall health and safety. And again, I'm glad somebody highlighted it. It's not just the firefighters. I think we've all been in the service long enough to have had our bunker gear inside, the front door of the house. And recognizing now what we knew now we didn't know then, and we're going to continue to learn that. So like you say, it's not all doom and gloom. Like you say, there's quick pathways for easy wins, and we'll certainly do what we can to push that along. So thank you.
Thanks, Blaine. How does it echo in Fredericton?
Thanks. I think that Chief Thomas, again, raised some fabulous points when he talked about the overall health aspect of tackling this. And I think something he highlighted were the practices that he and his team are using to keep folks safe. And I think that most every department wants to implement those right practices. And I think what can be challenging is knowing what they are. Mm-hmm. The science is still evolving. We're still learning. As soon as we learn one thing, we find that, maybe we weren't strict enough, or maybe we needed to do more. And that information, although readily available, does take resources to go find it, to put it together, to form it into a OG, OP, however you work, and then get that out to your people and train them and get them to buy in. So I think that is one of the struggles that departments are having, is knowing what the right thing is to do and then deploy that. So I think the more information we can get out, the easier it is for them in that really palatable format in terms of operating guidelines that keep people safe, makes it easy to transfer it and get it usable to our firefighters.
Oh, thanks. Great perspective. Yeah, that's one of the, I guess, the role of the provincial and national associations to gather information, make it available, and try to help each other in sharing the good practices, the best practices here and there that we could find across the country, and share it with everybody. Yeah, I've kind of took a note of that, and in my way of seeing things, also in cancer prevention, there are personal changes that we need to do in our own lives, in our habits, as to what we eat, the exercise we do, the sleep, the stressors that we could reduce and avoid. But also there's the professional side of, with all the SOGs and other practices that we put on the job to reduce exposures. And we need to adhere to all of those in order to get the best result. Cancer is multifactorial insights. So that makes it that we need to intervene on many aspects in order to reduce the risk level. On the training school, how things are going as to change in practices, standard operating procedures, or the way things are thought or demonstrated at school.
Absolutely, and I'll revert back to what Chief Thomas said. That was a great answer to encompass most everything we all need to be considering. And to go with Chief McCarthy, same thing is, I think it's going to come down to Also in our industry, I think is a lot of perseverance. We're implementing changes now that we will not see the impact of for many years. You said the exposure to PFAS over 20 years is likely a lot of the problems or greater. We're seeing, so if we're making these changes now, again, we might not see actual tangible change until 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. So it's going to require a lot of perseverance and commitment to go forward. Again, and I think the impact for everybody as well is just the amount of resources and time. We know that recruitment is obviously an issue, is when you have a volunteer fire department anywhere in the province of Alberta and implement some of these standard operating changes. Do you actually have the manpower and the ability to do some of these things on scene and undertake some of these actions? And then when you get back home, this is a struggle I currently have and have recognized here at Lakeland College, is our infrastructure in our building was only, was made from the 50s, and then a big enhancement in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we're all living in these infrastructures and walls that were designed in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, when a lot of this stuff and these spaces and these needs were not considered. So when I look even at our washroom facilities here at my main facility, they're under adequate just for the student load we have, but they also don't complement some of these strategies that we do need to bring in. So now I need to go back and have that bigger discussion on a long, or hopefully a short-term strategic, initiative to better outfit my facility to get those, that next generation when they're coming through the door, just to make that seem that that's normal practice, that you're doing that from day one here. And when you go out, you're likely going to run into the same type of things out there. But I think there's going to have to be, you said in most cases, some infrastructure update, and infrastructure is very expensive. When you talk about buildings, it's grotesque what it costs now to, buy some of the stuff we need, and even some of the cleaning technology that's coming and it's out now. Again, we won't see likely a big impact or a tangible change or evidence of change for a number of years. So it's going to be a perseverance game, I think.
Yeah, just like the home smoke detectors, we still find people not having functional smoke detectors. And there again, on the ground, we see firefighters, although it's been years that SCBA is being made available to protect them from smoke, not knowing it was carcinogenic smoke. But there again, some firefighters do not agree that SCBAs could be useful to save their lives. So, well, in perspective as to in our side in the province of Quebec, and especially in my department, we do have lots of procedures like Chief Thomas and Chief McCarthy has brought forward, procedures and techniques and so forth. So and we're trying to move forward. Luckily enough, our province with our health and safety board is quite proactive and came up about 4 or 5 years ago with a good practice guide for PPE maintenance, and it's due to be revised and published, actually a new version in this next January with the Firefighter Month, first fire cancer prevention month, and we'll have new guidelines revisited and updated so that we could enhance the level of protection. I would move down through the questions, and one thing, I guess, one thing that scares me the most as a fire chief is eventually one of my firefighter or one of their family members coming to my office and say, well, firefighter so has got a cancer diagnosis. How do we get prepared to face such type of sad, bad news? Has it ever occurred to any of you on the panel, or do you know of any situation and how it was dealt with? How could we share how to cope with such type of news?
I'll jump in on this one.
Blaine.
And having been, like many of us, around the block a time or two, I can knowingly say I've never heard of a Indigenous firefighter with a volunteer fire department that I can say that I've known them who've gotten cancer, but there's never been a connection to the work. I know career Indigenous firefighters who have, but on the volunteer side, right now, that tells me we have a huge gap in, first off, recognizing, making the connection, and then, then how do we provide the support? So we're starting, basically with ground zero. And I mean, if you work in the fire service world at this point, not only do you know people, you've been to 1 or 2 or 3, or unfortunately, funerals. That tells us, a lot about the state of where this is really at. It's well beyond just something new. And I'll just go to an absolute quick story. Back in the mid-90s, a buddy of mine, we were paid on call firefighters on a community about 12,000. And when you're that, you basically go to, when you're the A crew, you go to every fire. And it dawned on us that in talking with some of our counterparts, career firefighters in Vancouver, that we were seeing double, triple, or quadruple the amount of fires that they were, just because of shift patterns. And, on every hall goes to every fire, where, when you're a one-horse town, you do everything. And long story short, we were out fishing, fly fishing one day, because we had excellent fly fishing. We ran into a 75-year-old retired Vancouver firefighter. And I'll still remember this conversation, that neither one of us had met a retired firefighter. So I think this problem, that was 30 some odd years ago. I think this problem's been around a lot longer than we even are aware of it. So anyway, just pass it on. But I know we have a lot of work to do on the Indigenous side, because of the different healthcare, regulatory, et cetera, we're starting from scratch on this one, and there's no time to waste. So thank you.
Thanks, Blaine. Any other that wishes to share on this this topic? Troy?
Yeah, I mean, I have a little guess at a different take on it, that in the wildland firefighter world, it's not even, that connection is not even made. Much the same as what Chief Wiggins just said. It's just not even considered when we have staff that get cancer and pass away from cancer. Much because it's not been brought to the forefront. Now, when we talk about gaps in the system and how we address them, well, there's a research gap big time. Many provinces across Canada don't recognize wildland firefighters as firefighters by legislation, and thus are not afforded presumptive coverage for any types of cancer. I think there's 2 provinces in the country, I believe, I could be wrong on that, but I think there's 2 provinces that actually have presumptive coverage for wildland firefighters. But we have a lot of work to do to not only get research in place to inform us on the dangers, but to educate public and to educate our wildland firefighters, because the connections are just not made between cancers and wildland firefighting.
I think Nina wanted to intervene.
Thank you. I'll share with you an experience. A few years ago, one of our firefighters did receive a cancer diagnosis. And as part of that cancer diagnosis, unfortunately, his cancer was not one of the ones recognized in New Brunswick. We are lagging in New Brunswick. I believe we have 10 recognized cancers compared to our counterparts in Nova Scotia, who are certainly farther ahead. His cancer was recognized in other parts of the country. Unfortunately, he died. And his family was left wondering if they were going to receive the memorial fund, if they were eligible to apply for that memorial fund. He wasn't covered under WorkSafe during his treatment. And we had to lobby, we had to advocate for him to receive that, because his cancer wasn't recognized in our province, but was recognized elsewhere. The good news is, in the end, his family did receive the memorial fund. His family did receive that money, but there was a period of time there where they weren't sure what that would look like. And while he, again, as I say, while he was receiving those treatments, it was through sick time. It was not through work safe. And I think that really speaks to, you know, all the work we were doing this past week on the Hill, trying to, you know, make those connections with our members of parliament. And I know that, you know, we're having these conversations now, trying to see that standardized, because it really is very stressful for our frontline members, you know, and we're doing the best we can as chief officers, but you can't change what the decision will be. Like I say, in this case, we were very fortunate. But yes, it could have been a different outcome.
Yeah, indeed, and that's a point that you're bringing, is like compensation coverage is not equal across our country. It's on a provincial basis, and makes it that I think I could raise my hand as that we're in the back of the train. In our province, I think we're up only to 9 recognized cancers, as in many provinces, the number is way much greater. And lately that I've heard, Saskatchewan has gone up to about 21 cancers being recognized. And I think they're in the top part of the provinces where the numbers of recognized cancer is at most, followed closely by Alberta, Ontario. I think I don't have all of the numbers in front of me, but yeah, there's great work, and hopefully the adoption and passive law of C224 thanks to MP Romanato that made it to become law. It will kind of put pressure into the system in our country in order for a cancer recognized in one province is a cancer also recognized in every provinces. As to I think we're not exposed differently from one province to another. French smoke is not as nicer or cleaner than it would be anywhere else. I would believe, just speaking for my case. Time flies. It's already close to Q2. I'd like to hear you about, especially there's a need for research. There's a need for science to help us out in finding solutions as to how to cope with the issue of exposure, but also in trying to find solutions in reducing that exposure, or see if things are going right. So what this research process means to the fire service, fire departments, and what are our expectations? And I see just Larry is unmuted. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So research has to play an important role in here. And as we talked about reducing exposures and that, I think one of the things that sometimes gets overlooked, I talked about preventative programs, having early detection of fires in homes and buildings plays a key role for the whole system's response. You know, we've all had experience responding to fires. You get early notification, you get there, it's a much smaller fire to deal with than a really big fire. And so I know Ontario Fire Marshal's Office has embarked on a smoke alarm campaign, and BC and Surrey here, we have the Home Safe program, where we go door to door with community engagement volunteers in our high risk fire areas. And having a smoke alarm program for early detection not only helps save the lives of the occupants by 74%, if I want to get statistical for a second, but it also allows our system of response to work much more efficiently by getting on scene quicker, because we're notified quicker and we're dealing with maybe just a kitchen fire where, you know, we're knocking that down in 5 minutes and then getting out and ventilating, as opposed to a fully working fire on a whole floor where there's much more time and exposure time committed. So I think the research, I connected this to research. There's been lots of research on the effectiveness of smoke alarm programs and early detection for saving lives. I think adding that context about reducing firefighter exposures to help reduce cancer is really important for the cultural buy-in of your firefighters. And when they understand that that smoke alarm program and, you know, making sure you know, those places have working smoke alarms helps them in the long run is a really important, you know, subtangible aspect to this preventative and exposure reduction. So I just wanted to share that.
That's a great perspective, because we try to maybe find a solution direct on how we could reduce our exposure as is with adequate PPE and firefighting techniques and decon procedures and so forth. But yeah, there again, ahead of that fire. If the fire would be, well, if we could prevent fires at all, it would be at best. But knowingly that there'll always be fire. But if it's early detected, then faster response makes it that we're reducing the risk as is for a great fire and reducing the exposure. Great thought, Chief Thomas. Nina, and then Troy.
Thank you. I have to say, Chief Thomas, you do a brilliant job of teeing this up every time. So I'm so pleased you've been going first. Honestly, one of the challenges we're seeing right now, and how this research is and research is going to help us, is that we're trying to see our firefighters screened as part of their annual medicals. And in conversations with the medical community at home, we're hearing that the research isn't, or the data isn't necessarily there to support all of the screenings for all of the cancers. So what does proper screening look like? How often should people be screened for what cancers? Should it be based on latency periods? How does that tie in? What should those guidelines look like to help our medical professionals screen appropriately for the fire service? And also, does this information help the medical community at the onset, meaning at medical school, to become informed about these cancers in firefighters? Because that's the other part, is we're seeing that our firefighters are going to their GP and having dialogues and taking a letter that helps to inform. And for some of them, it's the first time they've heard this. And so it is my hope that this will not only set out some good screening processes that we can share, and also help educate, so that we don't have to do that. Each individual person educate our medical community about it, that they know and actually recognize, oh, you're a firefighter. I see that, and let's do this.
Great thoughts. I've heard that even oncologists are not well aware of the increase in risks, cancer risks for firefighters. So it's just like they don't have that investigative approach to bring it further than it would be for anyone else showing up to the doctor. So yeah, GP needs to, we need to bring that information to the medical schools in order for them to be better informed. Troy.
Yeah, I'm also really glad that Chief Thomas is teeing these things up, because it brought a thought to my mind about what he was talking about on early detection, specifically in structure fires, but really that spills over into wildfires as well. The earlier that we can get on and suppress, most fires, the less time that's spent on the ground suppressing those fires, and less exposure that firefighters are going to have to those. And I think that's a really good point. Never really thought of the research directed in that way and whatnot. I know on that side of things in wildland fire, there's quite a bit of research being put into suppression procedures and early detection and fire modeling and that type of thing. But the spin-offs of those can be exactly the less exposure for our firefighters. So thanks for teeing that up, Chief.
Thanks for the comment, Troy. Shawn, Blaine, Shawn, go ahead.
Absolutely. So my team and I have been talking about this lately, and I think we have a bachelor's of applied business and emergency services that we have students from all over Canada taking that, and typically they're chief officers are looking to climb into those chief officer roles, but part of that is a practicum, and they do 2 practicums with us. And a few projects have been orientated towards, changing behaviors in fire stations and cancer things. I'm hoping more of those projects are more directed towards this. But when I look at the National Fire Academy, they put out a number of these white papers that students have been doing and these strategies, and it talks to all sorts of things. We were saying maybe we need to be doing that too here, is when we get these really great things and people have done these great projects for us, we need to be publishing them and making them available for the grander community. So I think that's step 1 from our side for sure. Lakeland College and through the Emergency Training Center, since I arrived, we've actually made some big steps into getting into research. Not focused on this, however, but a research, I think from an academic perspective, is also availability of research dollars and opportunities there. So we are likely going to be entering into 2 research projects. We currently have one going on right now, but it's because, for example, National Research Canada had $30 million on the table to do a bunch of these different topics. None of them are cancer related, of course. They're more fire suppression and different things. So we're involved in those because that opportunity existed. So I would love to be able to get into things like this and devote time and effort into research, but you need the access to the dollars to do that, of course, and opportunities like this multi-partner research initiative from the federal government to give me, have me access that so I can resource that and get it done on our side. The other question I would throw maybe out there is, we have spent a lot of money in fire research, but a lot of it comes back to how do we combat fire, how to deal with fire behavior and all of that. And there's a lot of money invested into that, especially in the United States, but does that need to be balanced differently as well? Does some of that research dollars need to be back focused on the cancer side of it? Because cancer is going to be costing us a lot in the future. Is maybe we should start to, peel some of that back and focus on this being a very important item, but you can get into that and peel that apart. But that's my thoughts on those 3 things there.
Thanks. Well noted, I guess. Yeah, indeed, we need to move forward in research as to firefighter health issues, and cancer being one, mental health being another, and other types of illnesses that are more prevalent to firefighters than maybe other workers, as every types of work have their own level of risks and so forth. But in firefighting, we know for a fact that there's specific risks that we wish to need to dig a little more in research. Blaine, do you have some thoughts on this point?
I'm on mute. I knew I was going to do it. But I was just saying, I really appreciate Director McKerry bringing back or bringing to the forefront the background stuff around research, because that is such a critical piece. One of the areas of success we have had, certainly in the last 3 or 4 years, is the body of knowledge and the research agendas that we've been developing. We probably got more research done, specifically for Indigenous related fire components, activities, areas, agendas in the last 3 or 4 years than probably the last 30 years combined. So I certainly am, just I'm the guy that knows the guy, and unfortunately, one of the guys we know, we've got Len Garris on our team, and he's done a yeoman's job at bringing these issues forward. But more than that, it's not just the guy that it's the guy that he knows, and that he's brought forward an incredible collective from around the world that has participated, and we've reached out and worked with and collaborated with, and within the federal government too. But so that if nothing else, that's a win. But what is a more important win is that our research agendas are drawn from our peers, from our communities, from our partners, not from a closed door. And I think we need to be doing more of that collectively. And again, navigating, I can't help but appreciate that the whole access to research dollars is in itself. You need to be an expert navigator to go up those headwaters, and so it's great that we're the more we can work together collectively on that. Recognizes we've got some specific issues that will impact our communities, but at the end of the day, the majority issues will impact all fire. But I think the other thing that we are doing a good thing for, or having some positive influence, is that rural and remote and tiny town fire departments, everything that we're doing is exactly you can lay that over that demographic too. So I know at least we'll be able to support that spectrum of as I like to say, tiny town volunteer fire department, which often gets left at the tail end of a lot of the because they're not doing the fires that our big city and composite departments do. They're still facing the same level of exposure with and as I like to say, they're running on bake sales. So yeah, it's good not to forget the little guys.
Yeah, solutions found and ways to work and methods and so forth needs to be applicable in smaller departments too, as we may find it easy to put in or implement in larger municipal departments.
Yes, and I can't help to note, just on the last comment, Troy's, bringing to light that, so many of the, these smaller departments are doing that, wildland urban interface and or wildland firefighting, on a smaller scale. And so, yeah, the lessons learned will be able to be parlayed into these rural departments.
Great. We're just 5 minutes ahead from over time. We'd like to turn maybe to Annabelle. Do we have any questions, thoughts, comments? So what does IARC reports? Well, it means that the expected. Do you have any specific questions? There's a lot of good comments. I guess I won't be able to read them all on, but they will be all gathered and I guess be part of a report. So there's a lot of comments and response actually to many of the subjects that were presented. I think we should go for a final wrap up since we're close to up to 3 o'clock now. Any last thoughts from our panelists? Larry, you're first at the far core top quarters, so you're easy to reach.
Thank you. Sure. I think just to wrap up, I think it's great that the CAFC is holding this webinar and this workshop over the 2 days to help align all of the leaders and fire administrations to be alive to this topic. It's going to hopefully mesh nicely with the work that Health Canada has been mandated to do to build a framework for addressing firefighter cancers and hopefully get some uniformity in coverages across the country. And I think more importantly, help define what some of the best practice guidelines are for annual medical, physical wellness, cancer screenings, what that looks like. And ideally, from being an employer with a tight budget, it would be funded through Health Canada provisions, right? Our social health care programs. As it sits right now, that's an occupational health initiative and employers have to fund it. And so I think as part of an overall wellness program that deals with mental health, physical health, all those things, it should be something that administrators and fire chiefs are trying to find a way to fund and incorporate into their SOGs and their practices for the betterment of all firefighters, whether it's wildland, volunteer firefighters, or metro urban fire departments. So this is an encouraging step, and I'll keep supporting this as long as I'm around. And I'd like to acknowledge some of my mentors like Len Garris, who's done a lot of research in this area, and I've been part of that research, so that's helped with my knowledge base. And good work to the CAFC and all the participants. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Thank you very much. And I think we're top of the hour. So I thank you so much for your intervention and your openness to share your thoughts with us. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to everybody present at this session. Very grateful. A reminder that we will reconvene tomorrow by 11 Eastern Standard Time. Adjust your clock according to your time zone, as Chief Greg Jones from Amherst Fire Department in Nova Scotia and member of the board at CAFC will moderate a session on firefighter gear. So thank you again, and everybody, and looking forward for your presence tomorrow.